Hello again, and many greetings from the vicarage. I'm not quite so keen on the weather that we've been having, although I think they have promised that this weekend and next week should be a lot better. A couple of weeks ago, I started sanding down an old bench that belonged to my granddad. It's been left out in the garden for many years, and every time I look at it I feel rather guilty, because my granddad used to go out and stain it every year, and it always looked brand new. Hopefully, when I find a few minutes and the weather is much better, I'll be able to go out and finish it, and then it will look like I remember it as a child. Talking of getting back to how things were, I've spent a lot of time thinking and asking God to help us find a way to get back to worship in church. The information from the diocese that I spoke about this last week is helpful to a point. But as every church and congregation are different, it's finding the right way to open up our church safely for worship. As you've probably gathered, it won't be like my bench, back to how I always remembered it. Our worship in church will be completely different. It will be different by the amount of people in church, and we'll be missing so much of what we are used to. But it will be worship, and we will be together, even if it is a limited number. As always, I'll keep you informed when I know more. You will find today's reading in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 13, verses 1 to 9 and verses 18 to 23. It's a well-known parable, the parable of the sower. What is more unusual is that in the latter verses, Jesus goes in to explain the parable, because so many of his parables that we read in our Bible, we are left to try and work out the meaning. But this is one of the few exceptions where Jesus actually goes and explains what his message is. When Jesus taught using parables, he was comparing something familiar with something unfamiliar, to help us to understand the spiritual truth by using everyday objects. For those interested in getting to know Jesus better, they will search for the meaning and find the truth, although we must be careful not to read too much of what we want them to say. The parable is an encouragement to all spiritual farmers, which includes all of us, to go out and sow the seeds. We know that all seeds are different. Some grow faster than others, and they all need different sorts of soil and weather conditions. I've been watching the wildflower seeds that I planted in what was the old pond. Some were fast to poke through the soil, whilst others have taken their time. Some streams seem stronger than others, while some of the others look rather thin and rather weak. It would be interesting to see exactly what flowers and how they get on together and if they spread. Much of what I've just said about the seeds in my garden could be said of people. Some spread good seed, but not everyone is open to listen. Sometimes it might take a long time before what we have said to someone actually takes root. But don't be put off if you don't see the results straight away, even if you know that your seeds were good. Asking someone to get to know God and to trust him can't be forced, just like we can't force our seeds to grow faster or be stronger or taller. Both are left in faith to God. and he creates the miracle of growth. I think it's absolutely amazing that the words Jesus used in his parable were prophesied over 700 years earlier. Our Old Testament reading is from the prophet Isaiah, and you can find it in chapter 55, verses 10 to 13. In these verses, Isaiah compares the grain growing from the water that God sends down from heaven, to the word of God he also sends down, which he says will produce good fruit. I imagine Isaiah got very excited when God gave him these words, because he goes on to tell us that we all will live in peace and joy, and if that's not enough, the mountains and the hills will burst into song. That conjures up a beautiful picture of what and how we should be living. It's very easy to feel down and alone in these difficult times. But if you look to the Bible, there are numerous times, and some lasted for many years, where the people suffered from one adversity to another. But God never left them. He brought them out safely on the other side. The old saying that there is always someone worse off is very true. I watched the news the other night and I saw a report from Yemen. Not only do they have the pandemic, but they are also starving. The reporter asked why they didn't stay in their own homes for safety, and the reply was very simple. We have no food, so we have to go out amongst the people to try and find something to eat. In the height of the pandemic here in England, no one starved, and we saw an increase in charities and aid agencies, and even local people going out of their way to deliver food and support wherever it was needed. We really have no reason to moan, and things are looking brighter, even if it feels it's rather slow. Except for this week and a few odd days, we've had some beautiful weather, and for the majority of us, we have a garden that we can enjoy. So let's continue to thank God for his goodness, for all that he gives to us each day, for all the joys of living in such a beautiful place, and for everything else that makes us smile and happy. Let us also spare a thought and a prayer for those who are less fortunate, the sick, the lonely, the frightened, praying that God will meet them and comfort them as only he can. Amen.